Well, church family, the clock says a little bit after 5. Everyone visiting, that's a good thing on the Lord's Day. Any day of the week we can visit. So good to see everyone out again this evening for our PM service. So, again, good to see visitors back. Brother Daniel back with us. Of course, Sister Debbie and Jackie once again with us. First time in a while. In our service tonight, Brother Randy will be reading from Genesis 37. I think he'll be starting around verse 19, going along with Brother Paul's sermon tonight. Brother Randy Kane has our opening prayer, and Brother Donald Spry will have our dismissal prayer at the end of the service. Let's begin with number 810. 810, do the first and third verses and have her read it. In the dark of the midnight, I have oft hid my face, while the storms howl above me, and there's no hiding place. Mid the crack of the thunder, precious Lord, hear my cry. Keep me safe till the storm passes by. Till the storm passes over, till the thunder sounds no more, till the clouds roll forever from the sky. Hold me fast, let me stand in the hollow of thy hand. Keep me safe till the storm passes by. When the long night has ended and the storms come no more, let me stand in thy presence on that bright, peaceful shore, in the land where the tempest never comes. Lord, may I dwell with thee when the storm passes by, till the storm passes over, till the thunder sounds no more, till the clouds roll forever from the sky. Hold me fast, let me stand in the hollow of thy hand. Keep me safe till the storm passes by.
I'm repeating a little bit of what Brother Bryce read this morning, but this is the plot against Joseph. This was his brothers. And it says, when they saw him from a distance and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Now then, come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say a wild beast devoured him. Then let us see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, let us not take his life. Reuben further said to them, shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the varicolored tunic that was on him, And they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal, and as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead with their camels bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh, and his brothers listened to him." Then some Midianite traders passed by. So they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his garments. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the varicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine to see whether it is your son's tunic or not." Then he examined it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. And now Brother Randy Kane will lead our prayer.
Go ahead and mark your song books, number 945. 945, Song of Encouragement this evening. Done so, turn number 159. 159. Let us do the first and third verses, then turn the services over to Brother Paul. Should be 158. Correction, 158. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but me with thy powerful hand. Feed me till I want no more. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Bear me through the swelling current, land me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises I will ever give to thee. Songs of praises I will ever give to thee.
Oh, that we would learn lessons earlier in our life. I find this so true with myself. Mistakes that I have made foolishly, walking, thinking I knew what was best for me, and able now to look back and see, I just wished I had studied this more. I wish I had learned more about Joseph and how he was able to serve God faithfully. There's a song, spiritual type of song, called Through It All. I can count on Jesus through it all. I can count on God through it all. No matter what comes, how much trial and tribulations, we can get through it all. That's so true of our own lives. But sometimes it's hard. I don't think Jackie and Debbie can possibly know how wonderful it is to see them today, sitting in their place. It's been empty for a while. They know, they have lived it personally, the trials, the setbacks, the advances. Sometimes take a couple of steps forward, then fall 2 or 3 back. That was the way Joseph was as well. Things looked so wonderful at times, and then he would end up in prison. There would something else happen, and truly an inspiring story. It's going to take a few more lessons for us to walk through the events, even that we touched on, and that's a part in the very front page of your lesson sheet. 17 different items is how it played out as I was typing it even yesterday, and the things that transpired in his life. You know how blessed we are to be able to read that Noah was righteous in a world of evil. It's how encouraging and uplifting it is to see Abraham already looked at that, and how without flinching, without hesitation, he rose up early the next morning to go to the mountain 3 days' journey away, where he and the lad would go up and he would offer his only son as a sacrifice, knowing, even stating, that God would allow he and the son to come back down from the mountain. How awesome it is that we can see Joseph serving God, faithful to God through the trials as well as the happy and peaceful times. We stopped this morning, and again, I feel it mandatory that I say these are just pictures drawn, created. We don't know exactly how it was. We do know that Joseph was only 17 years of age. The scripture tells us that when this event took place, when his brothers hated him so severely, put him in a pit, and then sold him to the merchants as they passed by. The merchants would go out across the land. They would have these various things that they would market, make a living, even specified some of the things that they carried. And they would buy slaves, young boys, healthy, maybe good looking, as it was as far as Joseph was concerned. And they were paid the shekels of silver. I cannot imagine what it was. I can't fathom hardly how it was that brothers in the flesh hated one of them so severely as to sell him. But in Genesis 37, we read beginning in verse 25. And there was this company. They looked up. Here's the men passing by. And one of them said, "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites." He became nothing more than a slave boy. He became nothing more than as if they might have sold cattle or land or possessions. Reuben came to his defense and said, "Let's not kill him. Shed no blood for it." But then, as Randy read for us a moment ago, tugging at our heartstrings, breaking our heart, just merely reading what took place. They killed a male goat and took the blood and dipped his clothes in it. It's not just deceit, and it's not just a lie, but to their own father, knowing full well that the brother wasn't dead, knowing he was in Egypt. Many people have lost a child in death. Some as a small baby, others as teenagers, or even older. But it was the one that Israel loved. And their conniving, evil scheme. And again, we don't know what it looked like. But let's just imagine, even in our minds, without a picture before our eyes, the brothers stood there and watched the father wept. He wept for him, verse 35 says. Jacob had torn his clothes, a sign of mourning, 34 says. He put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. March the 3rd is a hard day for Ladon and I. Every March the 3rd, we measure time as another year has passed since Stephanie Michelle died. A father and a mother. And here a father holding what he believes to be the clothes of his son, and it was the clothes. But as if a ravaging beast had torn him apart, now dead. In verses 31 through 35, as we've already read, he knew it was his clothes. Verse 33, it's my son's coat, he said. An evil beast hath devoured him. And my son is even torn in pieces. I've often wondered why we, even today, talk about how someone died, how horrible it was. We've been at home a good bit the last few days and watched the fires in California closing in on 24 people, maybe more than that since I haven't seen the news today, that died and perished in a fire. I personally think that would be about as horrible a death as could be. Drowning, bad. Tornadoes, bad. But why we attach maybe so much as to the means by which we draw our last breath and pass from this life to the next, when in reality, we're all terminal. We're merely pilgrims and strangers here, 1 Peter 2. This is not our home. Just like it says in Hebrews 11, of those by faith Noah and by faith Abraham, they looked for a better country. They had not seen it with their eyes. They thought, they believed it, they embraced it, they were convinced of it. And so can we. But here the physical evidence was in his hands, in his eyes, proving the death of his son, the one that he loved so much. Earlier in this chapter, it says that the Ishmaelites had sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar in verse 36. Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh's, a captain of the guard. He was a man of importance. The Midianites sold Joseph into his care as a slave. Exactly what he was to do, what the plan was, we're not told. It is extremely revealing, though, how at a later time that man of prominence, that man of power was able to say to Joseph, I know that we have been prospered, we have been blessed because of your God, your experience. Pausing once again to accentuate that, may we be like Joseph. May we live a life that is such a sterling light. Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Let them see that our God for us even today is similar to Joseph's life was to them. That indeed, I know who you serve. Various other times in this Old Testament portion of our Holy Bible, we're going to see a king and other powerful men saying, I believe it's your God, the one and true and living God, the all-powerful God, and change from his former beliefs to knowing Jehovah because of the faithfulness of Jehovah's servants. I had an occasion in my life, one time especially, where someone made some statements concerning the God that you believe in. It wasn't that I had done anything sterling or awesome or phenomenal, but this person was looking at us, speaking to me, of the Church of Christ, as they would say it, and the one that you trust and the one that you believe in so much But the statement that followed is the one I remember the most. Albert made the statement to me, Paul, I want to learn more about your God. He had already told me about the God that he had known. His parents were Catholic. He told me about his parents and the life they lived, and it wasn't spiritual based. But they believed that they could go to Mass and say a few words or whatever it might be that he was alluding to. I don't recall verbatim. And everything was okay. But he alluded to the fact of what I see in you Church of Christ people. That was the way he said it. You live what you believe. You trust. This was in southern part of Missouri. Our house had burned less than a month before there. I've told you before of it. On a Saturday, we were at the church building working with the rest of the members there, and a teenage boy came bursting through the door and saying, Brother Sane, your house is on fire. Well, I knew our girls were in that house at first until I realized the neighbor had taken them out. And then I remembered Stephanie Michelle's pictures, the only thing that we had to remember, and it was in the living room. The firemen would not let me go in that building because it was a 2-level, had a basement. They didn't know but what the floor was already compromised. It took 3 of them to hold me back. Finally, one of them tied a rope around him, broke protocol. Wasn't supposed to do that, I was told later. He tied a rope around himself, and he was in a full suit, and he walked in about as far as from me to that pew and picked up the little end table where all of our pictures were and brought it out to us. You see, people watched that day, and they saw us and members of that congregation handle such a traumatic thing in our life, knowing that God is in control. As we would say, the rest is just a house. The rest is just possessions. Our girls are okay. We're safe. I'm not holding up myself up and LaDonna up as sterling examples and awesome. But what Albert said, that's now been 40 some odd years ago. We need to recognize Pharaoh, Potiphar, and the world around, the ones that knew Joseph, knew him as a person who believed in and trusted God. There are other events that take place. Chapter 38 is one of those. At this time, we're not going to digress and go into the details of that particular occurrence. There are so many others, and there's going to be others yet as we walk through page by page or book by book. I was talking to Daniel this morning, and there's going to be some of them we're just going to have to kind of scratch the surface of. But Judah deceived Tamar. And you can read it, glean lessons from it. At the top of my Bible, and it tells about Tamar's twins and so forth. But then we come to the 39th chapter. And here we find Joseph with Potiphar, an officer of the guard. May I pause and once again use the word providential? Joseph even will say, as we continue in the book of Genesis, God brought me to this place that I might save many people. even you, my brothers and my father. God's hand to his righteous, obedient, submissive followers in the old law, especially then, directly interacting and blessing. Read with me 39. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither, down to Egypt. But notice verse 2, how crucial that we accentuate this phrase. And the Lord was with Joseph. And he was a prosperous man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. For some reason, coming to my mind was a man in Nashville, Tennessee, many years ago. His name was A.M. Burton. I never had the pleasure of meeting, but I've heard about him most of my life. Very wealthy. Life and casualty insurance was, I think, his company. He often talked about that he had given so many millions of dollars away to help other people, to help missionaries. One phrase in particular that he spoke was, God blesses me. I just try to shovel it out, but God's shovel is bigger than mine. It seems that's almost what could be said about Joseph. He was so prosperous in all that touched his hand, as it said. All that he did was prospered in his hand. And verse 4, the result. And Joseph found grace in Potiphar's sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house. And all that he had, he put into his hand. In all of the books, references, there was one that was rather unique that took the position, well, he just saw that everything Joseph touched turned to gold. He just was greedy, and he just wanted to make sure that he got his share. I don't believe that. Personally, you can have your own opinion as well, just like I have mine. I think he saw a servant of the living God, and that the living God took care of Joseph. Verse 5 develops it further when he says, and it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. Sometimes I'm intrigued beyond my own good. I come to a particular phrase and I think, all right, what does that all mean? That Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. And my hypothetical thinking, my rambling minds may not be any better than anyone else. Others have had some pretty interesting thoughts to say about it. His personality was very good. He shared, it was very prosperous. He was very generous, all in all. But God favored Joseph. But you know, we can take a backward glance again and look at Abraham. We can talk about Noah. And the two of them come to my mind when I think of the fact that they too in God's sight were righteous. They obeyed God. They trusted God. Whatever God said, that's what they did. Abraham rose up early the next morning to go offer his son. Noah started building that ark with his boys. I cannot help but believe that Joseph was submissive and obedient to God in all of the law at that time, and the world saw it. Goodly person, well favored. If I'd have been on top of things, I would have had this up there as we read them together. And it came to pass from the time that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. But then we come in this same chapter, verse 7, a new paragraph of thought, a new occurrence. It says very simply, and it came to pass after these things, after all the prosperity, everything that was in his hands, etc., Potiphar trusting him. It came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. If we were reading this as if for the very first time, folks, we would have to say, "Whoa, this is not going to be good." I can hold that thought in my mind just momentarily and go over to the book of Proverbs. Solomon, the wise man, as God described him, and the multiple times that he would speak about a woman and her deceit and her enticements and the trouble that a woman can cause in a man's life. Now, I know the other side of that can also be true. It's not just a woman. But Solomon even uses words concerning evil, like evil and wicked. And the idea of the allurement, the enticement that she can wield upon a man. And knowing anything at all about that, when his wife, Potiphar's wife, the one that bought Joseph, the one that put him in charge of everything that he had, and now his wife behind his back, behind Potiphar's back, is looking at him with lustful eyes and said to him, "Lie with me." Joseph refused. And his words even was, "Behold, my master rotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hands. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee." He's given, but thee, because thou art his wife. How, Joseph says, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? We'll draw more attention to it at a later time. When we start looking at the lessons that we learn on the top of page 2, he knew how to handle sexual temptations. He resisted with words. He resisted with deeds. He would not sin against his master, but he emphatically said, "I will not sin against God." I'm afraid that we at times have our own concocted ideas of, well, I may do this and it may not be right, I know, but I'll just do it in secret and it won't hurt anybody. God grieves and mourns when we rebel and reject his will and we violate his law. And Joseph is saying, I'm not going to do this great wickedness. But it didn't stop there. The Bible says, and it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day. She had it in her mind. She knew what she wanted, and she didn't take no for an answer in her eyes. Day by day that he hearkened, but Joseph, as she said that, hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass, I like that phrase, you find it multiple times, more time passed, about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, to do what he was hired to do, what he was there in Potiphar's house to do the business, his work, and there was none other men of the house there. Potiphar's wife saw her chance, and she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. We have no idea what she looked like. This artist, whoever drew this, doesn't. It's just a picture. But for some reason, I would think that Potiphar, in the position that he was, would have a very beautiful wife. Maybe sexually extremely appealing. And especially to someone about 25, 30 years of age. But Joseph left his garment in her hand and fled, literally came out of his coat, she tugging at it maybe, and got him out. I love the phrase. Kind of blunt. He ran away and got away from her. He got himself out of the house. There wasn't anybody else in that house. He could have thought, well, there's nobody here. I mean, I can lie with her. Maybe she'll calm down. Maybe she'll quit bugging me. Whatever it is. Not Joseph. He left his garment in her hand and fled. Was that the end of it? No. It's going to be the end of what we're going to look at now, with time already flying by. But I want us to look at her lies, her deceit, her concocting against Joseph, the spurned woman that she now was. Doesn't he know who I am? Doesn't he know I've already said what I want him to do, and he's turned me down? And Joseph ends up in prison. But let's pause from our study until Wednesday night. But to accentuate before we close this lesson, that didn't change Joseph. He still believed God, trusted in God, was righteous in God's sight. I cannot do this evil thing, this wicked thing. Would to God that we had so many more people today that would see the temptations, the snares, the marriages that are about to collapse, crumble because of giving in to temptation, just as Potiphar's wife was trying to do to Joseph. But he said, I can't do this against Potiphar, and against you, and more importantly, against my God. Would that we would learn the lesson similar to what I started tonight, earlier in our life. The importance of saying, God said this, that's what I'm going to do. Man may be doing something else. Man may be having a lot of fun. Man may be prospering and having more of material possessions because of cheating or lying or whatever it is. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be righteous as best as I possibly can, even if consequences result. In reality, is one of the lessons that we will talk about in upcoming lesson. It's the spiritual relationship. It's not the financial. It's not the material possessions. It's not what others think of us. It's what God thinks of us. That really matters. That's all that matters. If you're here tonight, need help from your brothers and sisters in Christ, we can help you in any way. Newell is going to lead the song. We'll blend our voices together. If you need to, come to him as we stand and sing.
I bring my thanks to thee, the sins I cannot count, that all may cleansed be in thy one soul found. I bring them, Savior, all to thee. The burden is too great for me. The burden is too great for me. I bring my grief to thee. The grief I cannot tell. No word shall need it be. Thou knowest all so well. I bring the sorrow laid on thee, O suffering Savior, all to thee. O suffering Savior,